Greetings, campers, fellow members of the resistance, theater and film buffs, pervs all across the nation, and all the ships at sea. And if you don't get that last reference, don't worry about it. It just means you're too young. Ask your parents or look it up. It's okay. Welcome to the World According to Yoni. You know who I am, so I'm not even going to go through that again. But here, you may be wondering, for those of you who've watched the show before, as opposed to those of you listening and can't see, that I'm not in my usual space. I had an incident occur last week. Some of you may know I had my 65th birthday, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. My wife put together this wonderful Zoom birthday party with people representing my entire life. It went on for 4.5 hours and was overwhelming and fantastic. And for those of you who watched this and participated, thank you. It was best birthday present I could have had. And then even better, I got to do this wonderful interview with two friends of mine who I've wanted to get on here for a while. And that went beautifully. It went long, but it went beautifully. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But first, I have to make a correction. Last week, I was thanking my friend Debrianna Mancini, who has this wonderful podcast of her own and vidcast called Corona Kitchen. I inadvertently called it by a different name having to do with the same pandemic, but it is Corona Kitchen. Debrianna is a wonderful actress. She is a talented host. She has great guests. I think the one that's out now features actor, comedian Hal Sparks. So you really, really should take a look. Now that I've gotten that correction out of the way, I'll explain why I'm here. After I did my interview for this show, my back was kind of spasming during it, but by the time I was done, I was in agony. I mean, pain. And I've kind of been laid up with a back brace and heating pads and ice packs and all sorts of edible goodies to help me get through this, but it has been horrendous. So for those of you who follow my Twitter feed or my Facebook pages, and you're wondering why I've sounded even more pissed off than usual lately, that's why. Pain will do that to you. You know, I thought 65, I was bouncing around, jumping up and down, showing that age is just a number. It means nothing. And then I end up like this. C'est la vie. Anyway, let me get, because this is going to be, I promised. I said, I'm going to keep these shows under an hour. Well, bullshit. When you start talking to people who are friends and who have a lot to say and who are interesting and fascinating, you just kind of lose track of time. So this is going to be what it's going to be. And if you need to watch it or listen in chunks, I get that. But my guests today are two friends of mine who I am really, really excited to have on because they're smart, opinionated women with a lot to say. To fans of the Stephanie Miller Show, you probably know them best as Sue in Rockville and Karen from Chicago. I know them as my friends Sue Cohen and Karen Byrne. All I can say is just watch, because I'm recording this after I spoke to them. And I'm not doing a rant today other than what I've already said. We're just going straight to it. So enjoy the video or the audio of this interview as much as I did. Enjoy the show. Please come back for the next show, where hopefully I will be back in my studio and feeling 100% of my 65 years. Here you go. I recognize you from your faces, of course, everybody. Obviously, the beautiful redhead is Karen Byrne, also known as Karen from Chicago. And down below, we have Mima. We have Sue in Rockville, not from Rockville, but Sue in Rockville, because she's very picky about that.
Just accurate.
And I
because
know
I'm from Yoni, point. I'm
Please.
from the Bronx, but I live in Rockville.
You know I can't argue that because I'm Yoni from New York and I live in Maryland. How that happened, I don't know, but that's beside the point. I know you guys have no opinions on anything because you're very shy, and you make me look verbose. By the way, I want you to know I appreciated you showing up at my birthday party on Zoom Saturday night. Karen, you got the best laugh of the night from everybody who's known me for years when I mentioned how my voice had been paralyzed for 9 months. My vocal cord, I couldn't speak the day I met you. And of course, you said you thought I was just very quiet.
Yeah, it was like, that guy's really quiet.
Yeah,
it was like pulling teeth.
Hell of a laugh, kid. Let me tell you. All those who knew better. Okay, who's interrupting? Peter.
Peter, you got to take those phones. Sorry. Peter's sitting right here. Usually it's a one ring and it's it's Chicago calling. It's
the whole city.
It's that toddling town.
Wow.
Karen, didn't I ask you not to call while we were taping?
Karen, I'm shocked.
I even turned off my phone too.
We are, for lack of better terminology, part of the MOOC contingent. Now, I keep telling people who may not know what the Stephanie Miller Show is, other than my source for guests and audience, but you guys have been, how many years have you been calling in? I can't count that high.
Well, Sue, you go ahead, because I know I started in, I think 2010, 2011.
I go back a little further. I started calling in. Okay, so here's going to be a big reveal to all the mooks and all the Steph heads. You ready, Yoni? I'm going to say it out loud for everyone to hear. Okay. So my granddaughter, Molly, who is now 13, which means she was born in 2007. Okay. I have to keep thinking about that. Brother, 2003. She's 2007. When she was a baby, I would talk about her, and she became the bar baby of the Stephanie Miller Show. Steph, when she was on an AM station briefly here in the DC area, did a meet and greet at a bar in Bethesda. I went to that. Peter and I went to that. And that's where we met Jemay and some of the other wonderful, longtime, late, great Jemay Dewberry and some of the great mooks that have become our friends and our colleagues in this struggle, our fellow resistors. Stephanie said, "Where's the baby?" And I said, "She's 9 months old. Her mother is not going to let me bring her to a bar." And I showed her pictures of the baby. 3 weeks later, we were in San Diego for a conference helping our daughter so she wouldn't have to leave Molly, miss her daughter for 5 days. We were in the restaurant, the bar of the restaurant at the hotel, where they had a huge bar with a big barrel cask of beer. And we propped Molly up in front of the cask and took a picture and sent it to Steph. And said, "Here's bar baby having some beer." She has conflated those two issues, and from that point on said the line from the Sweet Home Alabama, "You brought a baby to a bar." And I don't know whether she really thinks I did or whether she's in on the joke. It doesn't matter. Molly's 13 now. Soon she will be drinking in a bar, so it doesn't matter.
Things go the way they're going.
But and then as the kids got older, they decided they didn't like being called bar babies, so they became the bar kids, the 4 older kids. But now we have another bar baby, and he's only 13 months. So we got Jakey for a little bit.
Going. That's amazing. I mean,
so now we're back to bar babies, and we're good.
So I have been listening to you guys for years, so I had known obviously who you were, and like everybody else who meets you in person, it's like meeting celebrities, because you guys, I know you guys, whoa, me, what? But you are incredibly well known in Stephanie Miller world, because you got official names. Sue, my God, you've got a Rocky Mountain Mike song. I interviewed Mike. I don't have a Rocky Mountain Mike.
Karen has a jingle.
I have a jingle now, but
Yeah.
I was the last one to get a jingle. And I have no problem with that. But I remember being at meet and gropes after the show, and people coming up and saying to Stephanie, like, Karen needs a jingle, and I'd be like, no, Karen does not need a jingle. Because somehow I feel like that process, then I would be like in this whole new level of Stephdom, so to speak. And so it
workplace.
Yeah, well,
you have. No, I'm sorry, you have. I haven't. In all these years, I listen to everybody else, and every time I think about calling in, there is this one person who gets online and says everything I'm thinking, which makes my calling in moot. Now, I don't know who I could be talking about, Sue, but I think it's the New York Jew thing. You get it,
Well, I also think part of it is that, the problem is, Karen, you have been the most successful caller to get time with her, where she, her ADD kicks in, and how much I love Steph, but when she's rolling, her mind is flitting 10 seconds, 20 seconds ahead to the next topic. So depending on when you get in, you get one shot to say what you want to say. And like on a day like today, when I called in, you had minutes. You did great, and she wanted to have a conversation with you. I'm used to getting in. I'm heartbreak Sue. I come in, I get my point, I'm out. Mm-hmm. Today I got 2 points in. That was a major that was a major coup for me. Mm-hmm. But just to go back, I think 2006 is when I started calling in. So it was about 14 years ago at this point. And one other time we all met was when Randy Rhodes, Ed Schultz, Bill Press, and Stephanie were all on that DC local, and it was the inauguration, because it was my middle girl's in-laws had come in for that, and we were at the theater, the Lisner Auditorium, for the show. There was a big show during the day before their show at night, and my memory's a little sketchy. But I remember my daughter challenged me during intermission, and she said, if you really know Stephanie, why don't you go up there and tell her hi? Because we were way up in the balcony. I was like, okay. So I went down there and I waited my turn. And then I said to her, I'm Sue from Rockville. I think that's the first time we actually met in person.
Oh, Sue in Rockville. You're not from Rockville.
That's right, in Rockville. And she just threw her arms around me, and I started crying, of course, because I was so overwhelmed with joy of actually meeting her in person. And then I slowly went back up to the balcony, and I looked at my daughter. I'm like, okay. And she's like, I believe you, Mom.
and then your husband saved your life in Philadelphia.
Yes.
That was an insane story. Can I tell you guys the rest of the way that story really, that kind of way it played out? Because
before you do, let me explain to the audience, for those who are not regular listeners or watchers of the Stephanie Miller Show. When Steph started doing sexy liberal tours, one of the shows she did was in Philadelphia. And in the middle of her set, somehow, you were there, I wasn't, Steph took a swan dive into the orchestra pit. Is that about right?
So, yes, but it was really at the beginning of her set. So we were in the second row, actually, with Jermaine, a bunch of us. We had bought a whole bunch of tickets. Karen, you were not there, were you?
I wasn't, but yeah, I remember the story. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all sitting there. She comes out and she's doing her loopy, great opening, but she's only a few minutes into it. And we can see that, one, there's no lip at the edge of the stage. And Yoni, you've done an enormous amount of theater too. And right away, your alert sensors go off and you're like, where's the lip? Where's the rim? Where's the place, the lights? And there was nothing. And as she got closer, actually, we all started to say, she's getting a little too close to the edge. And with that, she just dropped. She took a step and she went right down into the pit. Now, we all jumped up and ran forward because, again, we were in the second row. John Fugelsang, who I will love forever, came literally leaping from the wings and without a moment's thought jumped down. And Angela and Frangela came running out also. Meanwhile, she pops up and she goes, I'm okay. looks at me and says, "Oh, look, it's Sue in Rockville." hands me the microphone and says, "Hey, everybody, Sue, talk to the people." And I'm like, "Stephanie, stop. You have been injured. Peter is going to come with you." John was taking her back up, and then he brought her back up, and then they all went backstage for a minute, and Peter went back, and he was the first one to check her out. And thankfully, the hospital was literally across the street from the Walnut Theater, and thankfully she was fine. But I was like, no, no, we're stopping right now.
Oh, that was brain damage, obviously.
She was concussed. There was no question in my mind she'd been concussed. And we were just terrified. So once we knew she was fine, and of course the fact that Gloria Allred was with her, then of course it became a huge joke. But it was, honestly, it was one of the most terrifying things we saw, because there was no break. She just she plummeted. And it was terrifying.
Yeah. She's a little bit accident prone, I think. She's every time you hear, or there's a new one when she was in New York and she break her leg, or I don't even.
She had an accident in her apartment and injured herself very badly. It's much better not to do that. I also love the story of her walking her two Pyrenees, Great Pyrenees, that only come in white fur. They're bred to be white fur dogs. There are no other kinds of Great Pyrenees. And being accosted by an African-American man who yelled at her that she was a racist for having white dogs.
Oh, God.
And Stephanie's like,
black for having a black dog?
They're Great Pyrenees. It's like, okay, there's reasons we all carry some white guilt, and we can be insensitive to what African Americans go through if we don't experience it. White dogs is not going to be the deal breaker on this one.
I'm thinking not. Okay, guys. Now it's time that we've gone through the Steph stuff, and like I said, I'm really lucky because having been a mook, and I guess even having moved down here, I now have all these wonderful new friendships. We have, and at this time of plague, we have these weekly get-togethers where we get to see each other and talk to each other and bitch at each other because we're all feeling the same things. And yet, it keeps going. When I prepare for a show, and I don't have a Travis or a Chris and a Steph working for me. I have to go through everything myself, which kind of makes you want to tear your hair out. I have to pick and choose because there's just so much. I mean, every single day. But I caught something today that I think you guys may find interesting and enjoy. I have been talking on the air and on my Twitter feed for the past few weeks about how I believe, and I think it was then verified, that the supposed Homeland Security feds or Border Patrol people were actually Blackwater mercenaries because real troops don't wear combat fatigues, no name tags, and fake badges, not to mention their faces covered. So I was reading this morning that a Yale history professor, his name is Timothy Snyder, he authored a book, the book Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm sure as hell going to, because he said, one key way to spot authoritarianism, and then he said the following, this is direct quote, do we have any reason to believe that Mr. who, I won't say his name, would accept the outcome of the election? His tweet of July 30th was a very clear statement, but he has literally dozens of times before said he wouldn't. There is nothing in his career that indicates he actually likes democracy. And then he goes on in the article to talk about the disenfranchisement of voters, especially African-American voters, foreign intervention in our elections, his attempts to destroy the postal service so that people can't vote via mail, and the fact that by sending these troops into federal cities, he is causing all these problems that he can then use to claim there's a major emergency and take authoritarian powers.
Mhm.
Or as the reality of it I like to think of, it gets to make him dictator.
Mhm.
Or break it up and say dictator. So I was reading that this morning, and Sue, I see your mind going, and Karen's just like, oh Christ, not another one. I know. But
I was just talking about this morning. The thing of it is, if you want to know what Republicans and Donald Trump are up to, just look at what they say about Democrats and what they accuse Democrats of. And this didn't start with Trump. These people have not been interested in democracy for a very long time, or they wouldn't be doing everything in their power to gerrymander, to stack the courts with judges that can completely suppress the vote and overturn election results, right? And so when Donald Trump talks about, like look at 2016, when he was asked specifically, will you accept the election results? And I think he kind of skirted around it or whatever. But then what happens? He knew at that point that the Russians were helping fix the election to benefit him so that he would be the one. And then what happened right after he was installed? And I will never say that he was inaugurated.
No, I won't say it either.
This was a Russian installation.
Correct.
And so what happens? Immediately there are protests, right? Immediately there are Dems not accepting the results of the election, right? So they're very good at gaslighting and using narratives against us, and against the Democratic Party. So, we know right now that they're doing their level best to pit us against one another and to suppress the vote. I mean, now we're seeing it, going into this next election with the mail-in voting. And, so it's never been with the Republican Party. I would say as early as Nixon about democracy or fair and free elections, right?
It seems like back.
Go further back.
Okay,
go back to Reagan.
Yeah.
It really started to take hold during Reagan's time.
Right. Nixon, I think, started it. And then it just kind of, from there, every single Republican, Newt Gingrich, all of these key figures that have, because they don't have any policy that actually helps the people. Right. I mean, all we have to look at the stimulus bill, the HEROES Act that the Democrats, are putting out there. And Donald Trump yet is sitting there accusing Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats of not providing the $600 stimulus, right, to people who need it.
Which, of course, was passed 9 weeks ago in the House.
Exactly.
And it's the HEROES Act, and it has the $600.
Exactly. And then you look at what the Republicans are doing, and they want to cut it. And every single
3-day weekend, that's what they
right. And every single thing in their bill, right, is geared towards things that don't have anything to do with helping people through this. They don't care. They don't care. Exactly.
The challenge is name one bill in the past 30 to 40 years that the Republicans have championed and passed that actually help the American people, the middle class and the working class. And it's easy. You can do it on one hand, fold it and move the hand away, and you'll get to zero, which is exactly what they've done. Right. They are exactly. He is their leader because he is they and them, and they are he.
Well, they created him.
They created him. And
they enabled him.
They enabled him. Exactly.
The two pieces of this, and the reason why we have to keep emphasizing accountability starting next year, is that Glenn Kirshner is 100% right. There must be a Trump Crimes Commission.
Mm-hmm.
We know, see, people keep saying the wrong thing, which is, yes, the GOP is corrupt. Yes, they're cowards, but they're complicit. They committed treason. They betrayed this country. And the Kremlin is holding the compromat that shows all of the millions of dollars that went into their accounts. Mm-hmm. We don't, when we say Moscow Mitch and Leningrad Lindsay and Red Rand, it's not just because we're doing cheap name calling. It's because they're owned by the Russian government. And Ron Johnson and Devin Nunes are just the two latest examples of the clowns. These bastards chose Russia, not us. Mm-hmm. R is for Russia. You vote D for democracy or R for Russia. Mm-hmm. But be clear, this truth will come out. Mm-hmm. Let me be the opposite voice on the two of you, though, because I still feel there's a 30 to 40% chance that Trump's not even the candidate by November. Mm. I still think he may be outed. The fact that they're going to do the renomination behind closed doors, which the reason they're doing that is that they don't want everyone to see the hoods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I said. That's so funny.
I think that's a joke that all of us are using. And when I say joke, not so much.
No, I'm not saying. When people show you, listen, Maya Angelou said it. It's proven true every day. I will say this morning, it wasn't just Eric Boehlert. It was Charlie Pierce. It was Joe Scarborough. And there's a guy who has been a GOP strategist and consultant for 50 years, Stuart Stevens, whose book is coming out tomorrow called It Was Always a Lie. And it's about how Republicans are 100%, all of them. Don't say it's Congress. And every time you hear anyone in media call it Congress, no, it's the Republicans that want to kill Americans. It's Republicans that cannot govern. It's Republicans. Right. Don't kid yourself. And just in case, Yoni, you may not be up on the latest news, Karen, this is about Maryland. In Montgomery County, Maryland is closed as virtual schools for the first semester. All right?
Yep.
Then Hogan said private schools can make their own decisions. The Montgomery County government, which is completely blue, and our terrific county executives closed parochial and private schools and said, listen, it's not safe to bring the kids back and the teachers back to a public school. It's not safe to bring the kids back into a private setting, private or not. Just now, an hour ago, Hogan issued an executive order denying counties from making that decision, banning counties from, I am not kidding, because at the end of the day, Hogan, who has been getting all this positive press, and I want anyone who's watching your podcast and lives in Maryland to get on the horn to Hogan's office and to your local delegates. We may have a veto-proof majority, a supermajority in Annapolis, but he can still do these executive orders. That son of a bitch is a Republican through and through. He is a member of the death cult, and he doesn't give a damn. He's been out there pimping and getting all that wonderful press. Look who's the last great white hope of the Republican Party. Good old Larry Hogan.
He's getting ready to run in 2024.
Right. He stands up to Trump. Hell no. First 4 years of his office, he hid under a desk. He didn't do anything. The only thing he did is he took money from the counties to heat the sidewalks around the governor's mansion so he wouldn't have to get his dainty little feet wet from snow. And that's millions of dollars. This guy has been a GOP bastard from day one. And I'm sorry, my rant is over, but this just broke and I'm so angry at him. I asked the Attorney General if he could do something, but this is who they are. When they show you who they are, no matter how moderate they pretend to be. Done.
Well, I look, I moved to Maryland from New Jersey. So I moved to Jersey after I was basically forced out of my hometown of New York because I couldn't afford to live there anymore. That was during Mr. Giuliani's reign. So I've now seen from Giuliani to Christie to Hogan, who I look as a cheap knockoff of Christie, which is really a frightening thought to begin with. You know, Hogan is Christie without hair, basically. And I've been saying the same thing for I don't know, months now. That don't when I hear somebody who does not live in Maryland say, well, at least you've got a responsible, moderate Republican. I sit there and go, oh, no, 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 no. He's running the scam that Giuliani did, making himself America's mayor after, 9/11. And then Chris Christie did. Everybody in New Jersey knew he was a motherfucking asshole. But outside of New Jersey, they saw him during the hurricane and they thought, oh, what a reasonable guy who cares about his constituents. Bullshit.
Right.
He did everything he could for the wealthy in New Jersey and screw everybody else. Bridgegate.
Yeah.
I got stuck in traffic because of that.
Did you?
Oh, yes, I did.
Wow.
So I have a great affection for these clowns who try to pass themselves off as one thing when they're totally different. And the point that one of you made a few minutes ago, that whatever they accuse Democrats of is exactly what they've done and are doing.
It's gaslighting 101. It's classic gaslighting.
Yes,
it's exactly the definition of what gaslighting is.
Yep.
I couldn't even begin to express how much I agree with that. So we've got Hogan here. Who's your current governor? I was there when Blagojevich got his prison sentence.
Yeah. We don't have we have a really good track record of governors getting locked up.
Well, let's face it. A lot of Illinois Democrats. I mean, Richard Daley, both Richard Daleys. Not people we really want to be able to say represent the Democratic Party and spirit.
No, but so we're lucky enough to have J.B. Pritzker, and I have to say he has handled and Lori Lightfoot we have as the mayor of Chicago, but the two of them have done a great job, as good a job as they possibly could, considering the opposition and the lack of cooperation coming from the jackass in the White House.
Well, being mayor of Chicago in itself has got to be one of the worst jobs that could possibly.
It's not easy. I mean, she's having to, walk all kinds of lines, and it's like, you get it from all sides, I think, So, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know all of the intricate details of, what she's going through and, Chicago and everything. I know that there's a lot of people even on, our side of the aisle that are criticizing her, because I think, it's like you have to kind of work with everybody to try and get something done, and not like, be the machine, right? So anyway, but with that said, J.B. Pritzker, I mean, now he's had 2 state representatives here file lawsuits against him because he was, because of the stay-at-home order and then extending the stay-at-home order. So he had a lawsuit filed against him because he was forbidding gatherings in churches.
Good.
So people, even people that are, progressives here. There's a show on WCPT, and I'm not going to name names, but she was very angry at J.B. Pritzker for stifling her for free speech and right to congregate in church if they wanted to. And it blows my mind. I don't care where you lie, politically or whatever. That to me just makes no sense whatsoever.
This is an insanity that I cannot comprehend. And it's not only on the part of brain dead maggots, because I don't know if either of you were still on the birthday Zoom thing over the weekend when, I won't name names either, but a certain relative of mine, a smart young woman, and her husband had their camera on as they were going to a barbecue. I mean, they were going to a barbecue. No one was wearing masks. There was obviously no social distancing, because when they got there and I could see around, there were people congregating. One of my best friends from high school called in from, as he called it, a gathering. And he said, we're being safe for social distancing. And I'm like, nobody's wearing a mask. I mean, are you? And he said, there's only 8 of us here. And I'm like, no, don't you understand that it's the gatherings who are spreading this and making it go even more viral than it already is.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Florida is so fucked up, and Texas, because they didn't stop any gatherings they wanted. And how many of these churches where the ministers have now gotten or died of COVID? And I know I am not a good human being, but somehow for these people who have called it a hoax or, downplayed it and then caught it and died, I have a hard time shedding a tear for these people. I'm more concerned with the people they may have influenced or passed this on to. And what's really pissing the living shit out of me is that the only one who doesn't seem to have it yet is Guidolini. All those people around him are getting it. Well, why not him? I mean, come on.
Well, he's so demented, it's hard to know. I mean, I think the issue isn't his physical health, it's his mental health. And his slide into dementia becomes more and more apparent by the hour, by the tweet. They're incomprehensible. And people don't, the media continues to be a lapdog. Too many of them are lapdogs. And what you have is you have a man who clearly had some kind of stroke or event in November that left him with residual right side weakness. All you have to do. So what happens is, the reason he has that two-handed cup is that he can pick up the cup with his right hand, but he can't do this action. So then he brings his left arm up to push it. When he walks, and with the ramp and the one-handed, is he leads with his left. He was at that factory in North Carolina, and it was so glaring. You see him walk across the floor, and it's left foot, rotate right foot. Left leg, rotate right leg. Because the right side has suffered. Then you've got... Sorry.
The angels were coming. What?
Down. I love my husband. I love my husband. I love my husband.
We all love your husband. But
But anyway.
I have doorbell ring during shows, so it's,
Thank you. I apologize. But, and then in terms of what you see, the kinds of things, there are 3 things he's doing in his speech that are so indicative of early onset dementia or onset. I mean, he's 74, so it's not 100% out of his age range. But you have what's called loss of words, word retrieval. So all of a sudden, and mispronunciations. So all of a sudden he loses, and he has a tell when he does that. When he really bollockses up a word or he really loses his train of thought, he goes, look. It's always the same thing, look. And that's his brain trying to rewire itself.
Time.
Okay.
I love having the medical perspective on this.
The other thing is called perseveration, which is where he gets stuck on a word, and that word will repeat 20 times in 3 sentences, and you'll hear him do that, and it's literally a medical condition. He perseverates. They get stuck. The other thing is called flight of ideas or tangential thinking, which is where he takes one thought and then all of a sudden he flies off to another place. And there are lots of speeches where you can see that kind of tangential thought or flight of ideas, whatever term you want to use. But all 3 of those are serious indications of a very disordered mind. And the fact is, Just like Reagan in his second term had such serious Alzheimer's, he was not really the acting president.
Right.
I don't know who's running the show up there, but it isn't him. He's either one of the reporters counted, Chris Jansing, the reporter, he counted from 10 o'clock Saturday night until Sunday morning at 7. Trump tweeted 51 times. He either tweeted or retweeted, which means A, he's not sleeping. Not sleeping will drive you crazy.
Yes. Agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there's so many other issues, but the fact that right-sided weakness and these clear speech memory issues are so apparent to anyone with a modicum of reading, intelligence, or research, and the fact that corporate media continues to allow this dangerous lunatic to be in office is going to weigh very badly in history. They will be judged super harshly.
I think they will be demolished by history, and they deserve to be. It's also, I'm sorry, before you.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you jump, Karen.
No, I was just going to say, if I can interject, I would, I have a theory that the reason that he hasn't caught it yet is that he is so vile and disgusting that nothing wants to live inside him. I'm just going to put that out there.
Including a human heart, which is an interesting phenomenon. We haven't seen that since Dick Cheney. But I agree. And here's the thing. We said earlier that whatever the Republicans accuse the Democrats of, they're guilty of. Well, what have they spent the last 2-3 weeks doing? They're trying to say that Joe Biden should take a cognition test to prove he's as together as Kundalini. And my God, I hope to God that's not true. Because we're all in deep shit if Biden was as bad as that. And I know he's not, but boy.
Person, woman, man, TV, camera, and the one word they forgot, prison. I would like prison to be that 6th word. Amazing. Look, I remember it. I must be fit to be president.
See, now I would just go prison.
Oh, actually, the one I tweeted out was me.
That would definitely be a tweet.
You want to hear a quick Dick Cheney story?
Sure. Insult the old.
So when I was doing parent coaching, I would sometimes go to parents' house. I frequently I'd meet parents. Sometimes I had to go to their house. And I went to this home in Potomac, Maryland, a very wealthy suburb, into a very large house that had a Bush-Cheney sign in front of it when they were running for re-election. And, for the most of my adult life, I couldn't be overtly political because I was involved in early childhood education, running schools, doing workshops, working as a coach. So I had to keep this.
It now, Sue.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Also, my parents are gone, and I have to pick up the mantle of my father's political stuff. So I came in when he no longer could be the one to do it. But in either case, so I'm talking to these parents, and I couldn't help myself because this was the re-election. And I said something to the effect of, I just can't believe you guys would still, after what's happened the past 4 years, that you would still support Bush and Cheney. I mean, Cheney has no heart. And the father looked at me and he said, how did you know that? And I said, well, the way he acts. He said, no, he literally has no heart. His cardiologist lives across the street, and he's using a mechanical heart until he can get a transplant. And I went, I knew it.
We all know. I mean, the one thing I'll give Dick Cheney, he is the longest living human being without a heart.
Yep.
How he's still around is beyond me.
But it was so funny. He was like, yeah, the doctor's across the street. You're right.
That's great.
Right. Well, and I mean, you bring up Dick Cheney, and, and we were talking about Glenn Kirshner and, the Crimes Commission. And that is this is the one thing that we have got to, full court press on once Biden is elected, that unlike 2008 when Barack Obama took office, and he said, and I mean, at the time, I was like, okay, you know, I guess so. But, you know, when he said we have to move on and we need to, you know, not hold Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld accountable for lying us into 2 wars, that cannot happen this
Correct.
time.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was going to go next.
That it cannot happen. This cannot stand, or our republic, our democracy will not survive. We will not survive.
If the Obama administration that first year had gone after Cheney, Bush, and that whole cabal, we would not be where we are now.
Mhm.
And that's the one biggest mistake I think was made during that administration.
There's this assumption that people will be reasonable and play fair, because that's how we were all raised. You know, be nice, be kind. When they go low, we go high. You know, and I think especially as African Americans, when you're blazing trails that have not been blazed before in this country, you want to be as inclusive and kind and loving as possible, which is what they were. And I think they must have decided that getting the help ACA approved was the priority. And they were willing to put aside what might look vindictive or petty in order to achieve it, which was a longer range good. And so I was willing to, you know, accept it. I didn't like it, but I accepted it.
Right.
But nobody, and I think no one honestly, when you look at Watergate, we looked at a domestic series of crimes. And there were still Republicans who put the country before the party, who were not directly implicated in the acts that happened. So
Howard Baker. Howard Baker.
Yeah. The Republicans, there were still Republicans of integrity, of patriotism and loyalty to this country. And that doesn't exist anymore. And so it's hard for all, especially those of us who are older, to look at this and say, we know what the Republicans could have been. Jacob Javits, I sat next to Jacob Javits, who was a liberal Republican senator from New York, at my high school graduation, because I was one of the top graduates, and I got to sit on stage. And all I can remember is he had liver spots on his bald head. I was 17. What can I tell you? But he was such a good man. He was such a good man. Nelson Rockefeller was a liberal Republican. When I moved here to Montgomery County, the first votes for congressperson was Connie Morella, who was a liberal Republican. Okay, but they're all purged out. And anything that still carries a GOP label they're a fascist party. They're the party of right-wing fascists. Louis Gohmert. And I want to just tell you what the word Gohmert.
I ate breakfast. Don't.
Okay. Well, I just have to say, here's a funny little thing. So Gohmert is Gohmert. When I spell it capital G, capital O, capital M, lowercase h, capital M, capital E, capital R, and lowercase t. And the reason is the capital letters spell Gohmert. Now, in the olden times of doctors, of internists and residents, when you needed black humor, which you still do to get through your rotations, especially in the ER, a Gohmer is a person, it stands for get out of my emergency room. Because at the time there were Gohmers who would come in and they would sleep there and eat there and wash in the bathrooms. These were basically what now are considered homeless. So Gohmert is such a Gohmer that you just want it out. So I can't say Gohmert. I always say Louis Gohmert.
Yeah, well, I call him a bunch of other things too.
I think Pyle.
That's where I went.
Oh,
that's exactly where I went.
There you go.
Well, yeah, that was exactly.
I think his daughter this morning begged him not to be stupid.
Oh.
There was a post that his daughter said, "Please don't be stupid."
That's what I said.
Take this seriously.
His daughter said it.
I called him up and I said, you really are stupid down in Texas, aren't you? You know what? It's like, because I'm like watching the news and I'm listening to him talk about, I don't know, maybe I got, some germs in my mask and then it went back into my mouth. It's like,
oh my God.
Oh my God.
Doesn't he look like he was hit in the head with a plank?
Seriously.
You know, he got whacked and he's just got that look like, oh, what's going on?
That's a frighteningly accurate impression. And I'm so glad. See, you proved my point earlier as to why I don't call Steph's show, because you say everything while I'm thinking it before I get it out. Because I was thinking Jacob Javits as well. I'm thinking, as New Yorkers, we had a liberal Republican senator, Jacob Javits. Jacob Javits today would make Bernie Sanders look like right wing.
Wow.
Javits, I think, probably had more together, but that's beside the point. And it's not for anybody who loves Bernie. I love Bernie too, but
I love Bernie.
He's
I don't love Bernie.
Yeah, my problem with Bernie, and I supported him in 2016. My problem is he became a cult figure, and I think he began to buy into it. And too many people, I mean, we all know people, and we all can think of one rather well-known person who used to appear a lot on Steph's show. Who?
You're not referring to the guy whose partner is a $1 million movie agent, and he lives in a multi-million-dollar home while he begs for socialism, right? You're not referring to that guy.
Well, if it's the same guy who was,
I believe I'm not revealing any names.
Yeah, he once supported Elizabeth Warren and then changed his mind, and all of a sudden, everybody who didn't support Bernie was a right wing or corporate Dem. Which
here's how. Sorry, Yoni. I just wanted. This is how you know you need to block someone. So instead of using that term, the minute they say the words, they have to earn my vote. What are they going to do to earn my vote? See, I'm so special. I'm the most special human. You have to prove to me you deserve my vote. And I'm like, fuck you. There's 300 million people in this country. Get it. Put on your big boy pants and grow up.
Right.
I got no time for you. I got toddlers I'm taking care of.
Yes, absolutely.
Geez, Sue, I wonder why I wanted you and Karen on here. Because you can't say when you call in the Steph show, you can say it all here.
It literally that kind of narcissism on our side of the path. You know, this is why I call them Puritopians. I had a wonderful friend named Jessica Stokely Spruill. Jessica was a writer for Crooks and Liars, and we became friends when just at the beginning of I'm trying to think, it was before, I guess during the 2016 campaign, we became very good friends. She passed away suddenly at the age of 49 about almost 2 years ago. This was a heartbreaking loss for her whole community, for all of us. But she and I co-wrote many articles together, and we did a deep dive. We noticed no one would vet Bernie back in 2016. No one looked into his finances. No one looked into his past. No one looked into his record. All they could do was orgasm about the fact that there was a bird on the lectern. That's all that mattered. The bird basically became the symbol, and everything else was ignored. So she and I did a deep dive, and we found that Bernie and Jane were carrying a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Which all would have come out in 2016.
Yes, yeah. And that's Karen, spot on, exactly.
And that all would have come out. That whole everything that he had, that's exactly what they would have exposed had he been the candidate.
The interesting thing, though, okay, I was an Elizabeth Warren supporter, and I love that woman. I think because not only does she have progressive values and progressive ideas, but she also has plans to implement these things. So
she has a record. She has a record of achievement that is astonishingly wonderful. Not only her professional career as a professor and what she's done, but what she's done in the Senate, the bills that have been passed during Obama's time and currently. I mean, there's a real track record there. Bernie doesn't have that track record. He never did.
But the people,
Okay.
what drove me insane was the difference between, as it were, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. Bernie professed a lot of stuff. Elizabeth Warren, to me, was the reality of it. And yet the Bernie bros and the people who do not do their homework, do not do their research, or buy into articles that tell you that some psycho DNA alien doctor who supports Trump is, turns out she wants everybody to take the hydrochloroquine. That kind of mentality. They were mad at Elizabeth Warren for daring to challenge Bernie. I mean, aside from the the misogynism of it, it's, who cares who has the ideas or whatever. What we need is somebody who can implement them. I don't think
Exactly. Well, my biggest problem is Bernie self-proclaims himself. He says, I'm a son of a bitch, and I don't negotiate with people. And one of the last truly great progressive senators was Paul Wellstone from Minnesota, who was tragically killed in that plane crash. And, Al Franken, he was his mentor. Right. And when Paul Wellstone says Bernie Sanders can't be trusted and is an environmental racist, and this is from his time when he was in Congress, a representative, and Bernie was trying to put the nuclear waste from Vermont in Western Texas, and they were getting a deal, and the people of Western Texas, it's called Sierra Blanca, rose up and said, sir, you cannot poison our land. We may be rural, but you're Vermont. Keep your own damn nuclear waste. And Paul Wellstone championed the Sierra Blanca families and people. And they said to him, Bernie, they said, please, Representative Sanders, come down here. Come see this community, come see this land and the impact of what you're planning to do. And he said, I ain't got time for that. I'm too busy. Now, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's going to affect them for generations and generations. You don't win, if Paul Wellstone didn't like you, I'm good with, I trusted Paul Wellstone. So I wasn't in his corner pretty much from the get-go. That being said, at any point, had he been the candidate, I would vote for him in a heartbeat.
And therein lies the difference. Any of us would have supported whoever the candidate was, because we all know that, all right, call Joe Biden a corporate Democrat. Fine. He's done some things that I'm not real fond of. He's done
my number one
things too. But the fact of the matter is, if you tell me there's no difference, I'm going to want to take a sledgehammer to your fucking head.
Right.
Because if we haven't learned the lesson over the last 3.5 years, then we are too fucking stupid to learn it now.
Right.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton with her pizzeria child running thing out of the basement of a pizzeria that didn't have a basement.
Now you're going to go bring that up. The fact that most of DC is built on a swamp and there are no basements.
Fake news. Fake news.
But it's amazing how many people will still say it.
Right.
I mean, I've been posting this over the last weekend. I may have mentioned it on the show, but okay. If you tell me Benghazi, if you tell me, what are all the phony shit that they've come up with against Democrats? Benghazi is one of my favorites, but all the bullshit that they put forth. But you don't care about 150,000 dead Americans. You don't care about concentration camps run by the American government, in which children not only have been kidnapped from their parents, but are dying due to neglect and maltreatment, malnourishment. If you don't care that we have Nazi stormtroopers in American cities attacking peaceful demonstrators exercising their First Amendment right. But you say Benghazi. The kindest thing I can say is you are a fucking asshole and you should shove your head down the toilet and flush it about 10 times.
Yeah. Well, when I've gotten into conversations or arguments with people that are, I would say, Trump defenders, it's always the whataboutism, right? It's like, well, what about this? Well, what about, and all I say now, I just like shut it down and say, okay, we can have a separate conversation about, Barack Obama, but right now we're talking about Donald Trump. And what you just said is not a defense of Donald Trump. So why don't you come up with something actual to defend Donald Trump from what we were just talking about, and guaranteed it shuts it down. They cannot come up with one thing. But now, like with Bernie, can I real quick, because I did vote for him in 2016 in the primary, because I kind of was in the camp of, I didn't think he was going to be the nominee, but I was hoping that he would push Hillary a little bit back over to the left, to our, a little further on some issues. Mm-hmm. Now, the last time, he was slow to throw his full support behind Hillary Clinton. Now, I can give him the benefit of the doubt and say, look, there were a lot of people that didn't know that a lot of that was due to the Russian targeting. He fell for the Russian, micro-targeting and some of that nonsense that was going on in the false stories, the fake stories that were being put out there to gin up this division between all of us. This time, he is full on throwing his support behind Biden. In the primaries, he was able to write some of the rules, in the Iowa primary, right, the caucus. So now he has very quickly went over and thrown all of his support behind Biden. So I would really, really appreciate it if the people that supported him in the primaries gave it up and just went along with the person that they love so much.
Karen, as soon as he did that, some of his own people started attacking him.
Yes.
Which is, it's like, what do you not get?
Right. You see, here's the thing. When it comes to social media, it's become really easy to look at the right-wing trolls and bots. They're easy to find. First of all, their Russian to English translations are just off. They're just
really bad.
Missing.
Really
but
bad.
What's really hard are the left-wing zealots, the Puritopians on the left, who are harder to tease out what's a real bot in here, a troll, and what's really someone who just can't see the forest for the trees. I keep it very simple. Anything other than a vote for Biden is a vote for Trump, period.
Yeah.
Green Party, Trump. Don't vote, Trump. Anything else you vote for, anything you write in, Trump. So unless you vote for Biden, you're voting for Trump. It's either or. This is not multiple choice. It's A or B. I'm going with D for democracy. I'm going with Biden. Not my first choice, but as I said, I did meet him. I know who he is. I know. Here's what I care about. Love will trump hate. All the GOP and Trump have are hate. I need to segue to the VP because we were talking about elections and stuff. Right. I just need to say for the record, and Yoni, don't take this offensively because this is not you. If one more man on TV or in the press or in any tells me how to vet and mansplains to me which woman will be the best vice presidential candidate, I will punch them in the face. Because I don't need any men, any of them, no matter how learned, no matter how much I may love them, no one from Malcolm to Glenn to any man, including my darling husband, I can decide which woman I believe is the best woman VP candidate. And whoever they end up choosing, I'm going to know that they know more than I do in terms of what that person brings to the ticket. So if it's Val Demings because they feel she'll bring Florida, or if it's someone like Tammy Duckworth, who brings everybody into the field. If it ends up being one of the conventional people, Harris or Warren, fine. If it's Susan Rice, they can scream Benghazi, like you said, all they want. But at the end of the day, we're talking about 4 versus 200,000 people. Susan Rice is going to be in the cabinet, in the administration, one way or another. I personally think she'd actually be a superb Secretary of State. I think that Susan Rice would be immediate. It would take literally probably a month, because of her background and experience, to heal the rifts in the EU, between NATO, the EU, and America, because they would see her and say, and it's not because my son-in-law worked with her for 2 years and I know what a fabulous human being she is. It's because her credibility is beyond question. So I don't care, but what I don't want are men gaming out which woman and why one woman versus another. It absolutely is.
Karen's looking at me because Karen knows my mind is ticking, and I'm going to mansplain my response.
Please do. I'm listening.
I love you.
That's 2 birds on the lectern.
Oh.
My response to you is the same thing as I have said to everyone. Yes, I have my favorite choice. I don't know if she's the best choice, but I have my favorite. But we have a wealth of really genius level women who could take the vice presidency and actually do more with it than probably almost any vice president in history has done. Not to mention, if necessary, be prepared on day one to step into the president's shoes. I don't give a flying fuck which one of them it is. I don't care, because they're going to come up with dirt on everyone, no matter who it is. Yeah. Val Demings, she was a cop.
Good.
Kamala Harris, she was the AG and she did some nasty things as AG. Fuck you. Oh boy. Yeah. If she was a guy, I wonder if they'd be saying that same crap. Warren, I adore Elizabeth Warren. And I'm sorry, to friends of ours like Dave in Boston, I have no problem with them losing a Democratic senator for a few months. They'll get another one. But there is such a well. I mean, yesterday somebody said, I really like Susan Rice, but Benghazi. And that's when I went into a rage and I posted this whole thing about fuck Benghazi, the 150,000 dead, the camps, blah, 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 blah. We have a wealth. We've never had a choice like we have now, and all of them women. And I think this country desperately needs a woman. I love that meme that's been going around that shows all the countries that are run by women where COVID has gone down, and run by men where it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, can look, let them bring up Benghazi. The way I'm looking at it, we can bring up Niger, we can bring up the border, we can bring up Russian bounties.
There you go.
Thank you. That was the other big one.
So look, Benghazi, that was before we had 3.5, almost 4 years of Donald Trump and COVID. I mean, all of it. So it's like, go bring it. You know,
when Rick Wilson wrote the book, Everything Trump Touches Dies, we didn't realize he meant it literally.
Literally.
Yeah. ETTD, this guy was prophet. He was being a prophet. There will be a lot to repair. I mean, the GDP is off a cliff. The worst growth. And it's so weird, because who would have thunk that if you starve and deprive people of income, we can't spend money and the economy doesn't grow. I know you need like a PhD in economics to figure it out.
Right. Well, here. So I was looking at this earlier, and let's see. The Heroes Act put forward
Right.
by the Democrats. Stimulus check, hazard pay, unemployment benefits, student loan forgiveness, rental aid, mortgage relief, debt collection freeze. So those are some of the things that are on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have, what was it that, let's see. I'm sorry. Talk amongst yourselves. It's
But
on
the
here.
GOP
I
death
just
plan?
had it. Yeah, the debt. I mean, so I think Donna, our friend Donna, had listed. So
Oh, yeah.
here we go. Okay, so here, GOP COVID-19 bill includes $2 billion for F-35s, 1.75
But it was
billion.
20 billion for the F whatever.
Oh, is it?
Quibble.
I left out a zero. Okay, so 1.75 billion for an FBI building, 1 billion for surveillance planes, 375 million for armored vehicles, 360 million for missile defense, 283 million for Apache helicopters, zero for millions facing eviction, $200 weekly for unemployed Americans versus $600.
Wait a minute. Maybe they're going to use the Apache helicopters to bring food to the people who don't have any food.
Yeah.
Or
That'll happen, just like it happened
something
in
like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking, I'm glad you mentioned the military stuff because this is really important. You know that the federal troops left Portland on Thursday. So since Thursday night, there have been no federal troops, and it has been utterly peaceful. There have been a few fires that were started by, God knows, anarchists, idiots, whatever. Other protesters put those fires out. There's been no need for no one's been arrested. It's been entirely peaceful. You know, what was missing? The guys who were making the trouble in every city. And what people must understand is that those, as illegal as they are, they're legal on federal land only.
Thank you.
The minute they step off, they are violating the constitutional rights of citizens. And again, every one of these, this first of all, I mean, Homeland, Ken Cuccinelli, anyone who doesn't know Ken's background, good old transvaginal Ken, hasn't lived in this area. The guy who wanted to stick a wand up every woman's vagina because he's such a self-righteous hippo-Christian. What a moron. What an awful human being.
Right. And did you see, Sue, in Minneapolis, that guy with the umbrella that was breaking out the windows?
Yep. They found him.
Yeah, white supremacist.
Oh,
so, I was calling BS on all of that. When you see white people at these protests, you know, at these peaceful protests, and they're throwing stuff at police departments or whatever, I guarantee you, if they rounded those people up, you're going to find they're Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys,
infiltrators.
Infiltrators.
Yeah, well, I've got the new one. I've got today's huge one. This guy is my runner-up for asshole of the week. His name is Mark Hunt. He is a gay for Trump, which I have absolutely no comprehension. But he was arrested in New York City for defacing the Black Lives Matters mural.
Oh, God.
A gay Trump supporter.
Wow.
I suppose this is like the Stephen Miller, a self-hating Jew, you know.
Self-loathing is across the board. You know, the good news about Jews, there's a reason why there's 2 Republican Jews in Congress. Jews aren't stupid. There are literally no Jewish senators that are GOP, and there's 2 GOP members of Congress that are Republican. And there's a reason. We're smart enough to know better. And the same thing with most minorities. That most of them are not filled with self-loathing. When I was on the show today, I was telling Steph about the fact that, and I will not remember his name, and she calls him Mike Tyson, but the guy who's the Surgeon General.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. And, that kind of sycophancy, or I call it psychophancy, of people like him and Birx who continue to support policies, and then how they revealed themselves, because they both said basically the same thing, which was, As long as it was only blue states, we didn't give a shit.
Right.
We didn't see we needed, but now it's so widespread, it's gone into the rural areas.
The fact that they actually admitted, or that
I know.
That little Putz Kushner admitted that their methodology was to try to decimate blue states.
How they like it. So, I tried to explain to people, my mom, when my mom died, she was being treated for malignant melanoma. So we go to chemo once a week, and she was one of the lucky people because she just had to get a shot. She never had to be hooked up. It was a rocky 14 months, but she did not, until the end, have a real rough patch. But if you walk into any chemo treatment room, you see these beautiful, comfortable recliners set up for people. And there's usually 20, so back in the old days when you could actually sit next to people. And everyone's got a pole or something. And it is a rainbow of humanity. There are people literally of every age, every color, every background. And they all have cancer of one kind or another, because cancer doesn't give a shit. If you're a human host and I can get into you and destroy you, that's my job. COVID is a virus that's the same way. It wants a host, and then it's going to go into you. And it doesn't say, oh, gee, I'm not allowed to cross the border between North Carolina and South Carolina. Or, oh, I see, you're a Republican, I'll spare you.
With the exception of Donald Trump. Okay.
No, I've said it 20 times too. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So, if you politicize a health epidemic, there's something wrong with you. There's not, because this is a health epidemic. If you don't understand what viruses are and you're willing, I tell people, if you think the hashtag mask it or casket was a joke, you haven't been paying attention.
It's funny you say that, because one of the pot dispensaries we go to get the pain medication that we are legally entitled to here in Maryland is up 70 going towards Baltimore in Newmarket. Well, as we were driving there one day a few weeks ago, we noticed a giant new building right off the highway. Guess what they make at this giant new building right off the highway? Caskets. Oh yeah. It's huge, and it's right there, the casket company.
Wow.
And I'm like, I guess business is booming. How nice for them.
That is. Oh God, that is a sad commentary. Honest to God, that really is.
It was kind of like brings it home very, very vividly.
Yes.
I don't know. I have this thing I do every week. I started it as a joke one week, and I've maintained it. I choose. Thank you. For those of you who are on
you didn't ask me who my VP pick is.
I'm so glad you're being discreet.
Well, for those who watch on YouTube, they will catch that. For those of you who are just listening, Karen just gently brought through the screen her Elizabeth Warren sign. Subtle. I love your subtlety. I'm right there with you. But
I got no problem with Liz. I adore her.
Of course. But
my goal is to be half as smart as her.
And mine is to be half as smart as you. So
same.
Thank you. That's sweet.
Anyway, my fun thing is I started choosing an asshole of the week. And it first of all, I took the Ignoranus-In-Chief out of the equation because
he's every week.
He's every week, and there's just no contest, so he gets a category all by himself.
It's the lifetime, it's emeritus. It's the asshole emeritus, lifetime achievement.
He wins the Vlad Putin Award for asshole of the lifetime. So every week I choose, and then I started finding there was no way to choose one, so I had to have a runner-up. This week I had the runner-up because the Mark Hutt, the gay Trump supporter, certainly deserves to be the runner-up asshole of the week, just because. I had to declare a tie this week, though, between Moscow Mitch and my other favorite entity, William Barr. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. McConnell, for not only his history of being the biggest motherfucking asshole to ever break his oath of office as Senate Majority Leader, but for taking this time, this weekend, where millions of people are going to lose their unemployment, including my wife, for people who are going to be forced out of their homes, to declare a 3-day weekend for the Senate so that they didn't have to even deal with the issue. They can just pass it on, let it go. So that alone makes him, as far as I'm concerned, an asshole of the week. Now, Barr, okay, for his continuous and continual spitting on the Constitution and the people of the United States, for being a party to these Blackwater Gestapo masquerading as Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol people attacking citizens in the streets of America. And we all know that Mr. Barr is planning an October surprise, whatever that may be. But we have a January surprise for Mr. Barr. I'm just hoping that we can find a jumpsuit with black and white pinstripes big enough to fit his bulbous fat ass, because they may use it all up for Trump. So I don't know if there's going to be enough material left over.
Oh, there'll be plenty. Ask John Mitchell what happens when an AG commits crimes. Oh, he's dead. Wait a second. He went to jail.
Is a choir boy compared to William.
Well, here's the thing, right? And what people, there's a lot of ways to, and there really is a lot of ways, because he was convicted of obstruction of justice, and he was convicted of perjury. But the truth was, he wasn't actually Attorney General when he committed the crimes. He committed the crimes as the head of CREEP, which was the perfectly named re-election group. But what Barr really is Roy Cohen. Roy Cohen, who was McCarthy's fixer, was also Trump's fixer. And it was through Cohen that Roger Stone and Paul Manafort got into the mix also, which then brought in everyone else. So Barr is the new Roy Cohen for Trump, which would be fine if he was Rudy Giuliani and he was just his lawyer. But as the head of the I know every decent lawyer in America wants this guy behind bars. He wants him disbarred Barr. Then he needs to be indicted, prosecuted, convicted, and in prison. Right. Because if no one's above the law, then you go after the big people first. I do want to say something about Eric Prince that most people don't know when you're talking about Gestapo and stuff. Because not only is that vile piece of shit, Betsy DeVos's brother, which is all you really need to know, is that these are vile, evil people that hide behind a cloak of pseudo-Christianity when there's nothing Christian about them. Onward Christian soldiers, right? But the thing about most people don't realize, I believe you take the measure of a person based on how they treat the people they supposedly love and the people around you. So, for example, I had an ex-brother-in-law who was a real piece of shit to my sister, but everyone loved him. He was such a good guy. Outwardly. In the community, everyone loved him. Privately, what's a little smacking around the wife and kids?
Wow.
And my only regret is that, she finally divorced him and the kids are done with, have no relationship with him. But unfortunately, he's still alive. He married 3 other women, pregnated God knows how many. Real piece of shit. Well, speaking of pieces of shit, Eric Prince. Most people don't know this. When Eric Prince's first wife was young, in her 30s, she developed an aggressive form of cancer. And while she was at home dying of cancer, they had a nanny who was taking care of their young child. He then fucked the nanny and got her pregnant. And when the wife died, he brought that pregnant bitch to her funeral. And he says, I'm a God warrior. And so then he married and divorced her. I mean, he's like the Newt Gingrich of Gestapo people. You know, let me fuck them while they have let me fuck someone else while we have cancer. And then I'm going to tell people. I mean, Newt Gingrich told his second wife who he was cheating on with Callista Flockhart, or whatever her real name is, Callista. Fake Catholic, Catholic Callista. While he was cheating on her, she said to him, "How can you be the moral majority and stand there and try to
go after Clinton,
Bill Clinton?" And he said, "Oh, it doesn't matter what I do. It only matters what I say." Well, Newt, guess what? It turns out that what you do matter, because every time you open your mouth, I say, "Did you say that while you were fucking your mistress while your wife was in a hospital with cancer, or was it when you were fucking Callista and cheating on your second wife?" Don't you go moral on me. Don't pretend you are some kind of the higher moral being when you're a piece of crap and you're a serial adulterer. And Prince not only is a murderer who should have gone to jail over the Blackwater scandal, but that's who he is. And as we circle all the way back, we go back to good old Maya Angelou. When people show you who they are, believe them.
Yep.
Well, not only that, but speaking of Republicans and pieces of shit.
Yes.
Please do.
And hypocrites, Denny Hastert. We can put him in the same category.
Exactly.
He's going after Clinton in the impeachment. Piece of garbage. Now where?
Was he going after boys when he wasn't going after?
Yeah. There was hush money paid.
And now we've got Jim
boys,
Jordan.
There you go. Your mind works like mine.
Exactly.
And we're back to Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan. Yep.
Let me refrain. And Yoni, this is not a height issue for men. The men in my family are all short. It isn't that. It's the posturing of Jim Jordan and the way he acts so tough. And he's 5'7". He's a little man, and he always tries to put himself in positions where you can't see how short he is.
If he was 6'2", he would be a little man.
Well, no, he's little.
That's true.
You know what they say about little men. They have very little brains. So
you do remember that I'm 5'5", right?
No, I'm 5. Listen, we're both. As I said, this isn't about short men who act big. You're a moral man. You stand tall because of who you are. He tries to stand tall, but he's not. And it is who he is that makes him truly small. How tall is Devin Nunes, by the way?
Oh God! Here's the problem when you start talking about these people. One person will remind you of the next person, will remind you of the next person. And then you realize how deeply entrenched their racism, their stupidity, their ignorance, their arrogance, their greed goes. And there are so many. You can just keep going and going.
Hey, where's Nestor? Where's Matt Gates' beloved son, Nestor? We haven't heard much from him lately.
Right.
Where is little old Nestor these days?
They sent him back over the border, I think.
On a boat somewhere between here and Cuba.
Oh my God, yeah. It never ends. But this is why I wanted you guys on, because I do my weekly rant, but I knew I wasn't going to have to do that this week. This is my way of cheating, because I'm still recovering from my birthday party. You guys get to do it for me, and I'm really enjoying the hell out of it. Do you accept my choices for assholes of the week?
I think very good.
So again, it's such a big pool. I mean, Louis Gohmert should be in there.
That was the problem.
You may want to add a category called Dead Assholes of the Week, because Herman Cain would certainly fit into that one.
Yeah, we could celebrate with a Little Caesar's pizza or something.
Too soon. I'm just kidding.
Again, talking about politicizing. You're a 74-year-old man who is a stage 4 colon cancer survivor. You are immunosuppressed for the rest of your life. You're 74. You are so blessed and lucky to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And you deliberately put yourself in harm's way and others in harm's way for a political point. For someone who's as scummy, who when you scrape the bottom of the barrel, under the scum at the bottom of the barrel lies Donald Trump. Yep. And you put your life in jeopardy for him, and now you're dead.
Yep.
How do you can't grieve someone like that. I don't want these people to die.
I would argue if I didn't agree 100%. By the way, before I forget, I wanted to, you were talking about William Barr as Twitler's Roy Cohen. I contend he has several, because I believe that Stephen Miller is in truth the bastard child of Roy Cohen and Joseph Goebbels. So, you know, there's Roy Cohen coming at you from all directions. That's a really frightening thought for those who know who and what Roy Cohen was.
And if you haven't, you should watch Angels in America for sure. And see
one
of the most amazing shows ever.
My acting award, the only award as a best actor I've ever received, was to play Roy Cohen in Angels in America.
Bravo! Wow!
And while I was researching the role, I had the benefit of my father, who had known Cohen in New York. My father was involved in New York City politics.
Wow.
He ran.
How? Can I ask how?
He was, like, my parents met at a meeting of the New Deal Democrats in the late 1940s. My father was very involved in city campaigns. He ran Franklin Roosevelt Jr.'s congressional campaign.
Wow.
And he also, the highlight of my dad's life, I think, other than my mother, was getting to escort Eleanor Roosevelt, who he worshipped, to an event.
Oh,
that is so
what a great family memory to hold.
And so, of course, during his time early on, he came in contact with Roy Cohen. So when I was reading all these books, trying to, and I'd known who he was, obviously, but I asked my father for his personal opinion of Roy Cohen, and I couldn't get him beyond that fucking scumbag bastard asshole. And I think those were some of the kinder things he had to say. But not a big fan, which didn't help my characterization a lot, but it was nice to know, that my dad had it really pegged well.
Well, he's a good judge of character, no doubt he was.
Oh, absolutely.
The thing about Stephen Miller, and again, I know I tend to look at these smaller things, the human, the personal person. I don't need to see all the other horrendous things. Who is this person? Well, Stephen Miller is a man who lost his grandma to COVID and lied about it because it wasn't politically to his advantage of the guy whose dick he apparently sucks every day. Either he sucks his ass dick or both. I don't know what Hope Hicks does, he doesn't do, or maybe they both take turns. I don't think
it's like a triple play.
Yeah, I don't know. They spell each other. But to be that
these are things that I really hate to think of wasting fun on people like that. And just...
But no, think about your family. Listen, Yoni, you were at this we were lovely to be included in your party. And I said it then. You have this loving family, these long friendships of people who just were happy to be together for a little while, to just either give you a hard time or celebrate you, or what friends and family are supposed to do. Right. And we think about our families and what that means, because at the end of the day, as the late Mark Twain a long time ago said, no one on their deathbed wishes they had spent more time at work.
No.
And so you measure your life at the end of it by the people who love you, who you've been loved, how true to yourself. So what kind of scumbag do you have to be a Donald Trump, or to be a Stephen Miller, or to be an Eric Prince? And William Barr. Look, William Barr's father is the guy who hired Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
So you look at these guys and they're just horrible people.
And Bar is also Opus Dei. Let's not forget that.
Let's not forget the holy rollers of the Catholic Church.
Mm.
Yeah, and Scalia was one of them. Antonin Scalia was Opus Dei. And Pat Cipollone is one. And a lot of people in the Federalist Society are too. Yeah. So you've got that, and the fact that and I love Sonia Sotomayor. She is not an Opus Dei, but of the there are five out of 9 Supreme Court justices are Catholic. Mm-hmm. That's too many Catholics. There's 3% of the population. That is not reflective of the United States of America. That's a problem. And I would say that if there were 5 Jewish judges, and I would say that if there were 5 of any kind, if a majority of the Supreme Court judges embraced one ethnic or religious group, there's a potential conflict that is not healthy.
And what classification do we use for Clarence Thomas other than moron?
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay.
There are words I don't say. They're floating around. I was listening. I don't know how many people saw John Oliver last night, but in about 12 minutes, John Oliver did a how American history should be taught and what isn't taught in American history that was beyond brilliant, and really talked about how, and he was talking about African American voices and experiences, but it's true about Native Americans, women, and every underrepresented people that we've seen in terms of the American history books that we've been growing up with. Mm-hmm. Growing up in the New York area, I assume the Chicago area, here in Montgomery County, our kids have had a pretty rich and at least more balanced approach to learning history, and especially American history. But, my people didn't come here till 1949. So I don't have any history as an American prior to that. I was the first American baby in the family. Mm-hmm. My parents didn't become citizens till 4 years after I was born, because they was, it was a 5-year citizenship wait, as it still is. I'm sorry that phone is ringing, but it will go away.
5. Keep going.
My husband will hear it. Oh, Peter. I can't hear it. I'm sorry, he can't. My husband is playing guitar right now, and if he's playing guitar, he's got his earphones in and he hears nothing else. So this phone will stop ringing. I apologize. Okay. It's gone. So anyway, so it's interesting. My perspective is a little different. I don't have white guilt. My parents were slaves for 5 years. So I believe it, and my parents survived their senior life because they got reparations from Germany that they added to their Social Security. Mm-hmm. And that gave them a livable wage. They could live on that. So I believe in reparations for any group that never got the money they would deserve for the work they did. Mm-hmm. That's about all I can say. And I'm trying to learn as much about American history that I didn't learn when I was actually a student. So I recommend everyone listen to John Oliver and then start reading about the incredible people of this world.
America better than Americans.
Yeah, there's a great textbook. I remember when Frangela was hosting, they were hosting for Stephanie, and they had this woman on, and she was talking about this great textbook. It's called Life Upon These Shores. And it's all about African American history and just all of the contributions. And I mean, for me, what it comes down to, when you have curriculum in Texas, right? History, they're removing Hillary Clinton from the history books, right? I mean, it's like, honestly, it's just like, it's to laugh, but it's just like, again, with the Republicans, they have no interest in education. The whole reason that they don't want to fund education and, let's leave it to the states, which is total nonsense. We need a national standard for education. And this is required curriculum. It should not be 1 month of Black history. We should be teaching in greater detail the beginnings of this country, from what we did to the Native Americans, how we, enslaved Black Africans, and all the way through. And this all has to be taught. We have got to do a better job. And it's just like, you talk about the laundry list of things that we're going to have to do,
when it's the process, and I'm willing to engage in that process. And I'm even willing to be patient with that process. And we've come a long way. The fact that the African American History Museum is present, that there's a Holocaust Museum, that there's a Native American Museum in DC. We recognize that the diversity that made this country the country it is exists, and their voices all need to be heard. And yet we still are dealing with pockets of ignorance where they are just trying to pretend. And I will tell you, as the early childhood specialist, every time I see Trump do something, this is what I tell you this vignette. When my son was 2, his BFF, Stuart, who was 2, when Stuart was going to do something naughty, he would walk by us like this. Because he knew in his egocentrism.
Sue covered her eyes. So
yes. So if I can't see you, then you can't see me do the things that I'm doing that are not allowed. And I would just howl with laughter because I'd be like, well, I don't know, who's going to tell him that we actually can see what he's doing? And this is who Trump is. He thinks if he reverses what he says or we don't see it, it didn't happen. If he denies it happens, or if he goes, oh, look, and then he tries to take it. His dyslexia, by the way, kicks in. He once was trying to say the word united, but he said untied. And instead of having the humility to say, I meant united, he decided, because he's such a schmuck, he decided to try to make the word untied work in the sentence.
Oh, God.
It didn't. So then it just became this convoluted nonsense, and then he went,
what
look,
a clown.
And then look, rewire my brain, quick, reset.
I love this stuff. This is, but okay. I had a point, and I think I completely lost it because I got lost in Sue's thing. But the levels of hypocrisy. Okay. My asshole of the week last week was a fundamentalist Christian who couldn't understand how any Christian could vote Democratic because we support late-term abortions. You can imagine, if you have not listened or watched that show, that I had quite the response to that. The thing I have no ability to comprehend. How can any American service person support a guy who is friends with a foreign leader, has taken favors from a foreign leader who has put a hit out on American service people? How can you, as a veteran or somebody still in service, support that person who has not said one motherfucking word about it?
Nor has a Republican.
No, I don't expect them, but this son of a bitch should have said something. His handlers should have said, you have got to say something. Of course, they're probably afraid he'd do what he did about the Nazis in Charlottesville and say they're very fine people, so what the hell? Maybe that was better for him not to do that. Same with people who cannot see. They'll scream Benghazi, but 150,000 dead Americans doesn't mean shit to them. There is a mentality that I know for myself I'm incapable of comprehending. I'm incapable of comprehending the asshole in Walmart last weekend who ripped off his mask at the in-store camera and said, fuck you, Walmart, and showing he did not have to wear a mask in Walmart, even though the signs were up everywhere. They were actually trying to encourage social distancing, going one way up and down each aisle. Walmart was doing this. A lot of the other stores weren't, and I don't expect them to be that conscientious, but they were. And this guy was just saying, fuck you all. And there were people in front of him and in back of him who weren't 2 feet away. Didn't care. And every time my wife tried to take his picture, he turned away. So my wife, being the nice, subtle person she is, went to an employee and said, you need to find a manager now. and you need to get this guy the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot comprehend this mentality. I try to understand, I try to find, some form of communication with people like this. I can't do it. You talk about John Oliver's monologue. I talked last week about Jordan Klepper, the thing he did for The Daily Show, where he went out interviewing Trump supporters, and the one person who said it all for me was the idiot who goes, well, why do you support Trump? He says, well, Obama, he did nothing after 9/11 and he just sat around. He did not. And it's like, I hate to bring it up, but Obama wasn't president then. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even in the Senate then. So we're dealing, and I hate to repeat myself, but we are dealing with Darwin Award winners on steroids.
Mhm.
And I am going to take this opportunity to let you two do a wind up here with that one.
Well, I will say this. The Republican Party and their followers and their voters can no longer claim to be patriots. Okay? They can no longer pretend to be the party of family values. They can no longer claim to be the party of pro-life, because what we have seen for many, many years, but especially if you just want to go back 3.5 years, they absolutely are not. Peaceful protesters are patriots. Peaceful protesters that are assembling at these detention centers where they are holding indefinitely families, fathers, mothers, and they're taking children out of their mother's arms and putting them in places where they are living in their own filth. And then now with the COVID outbreak, where there are hundreds of thousands of people that are dying and they're doing nothing about it. They don't care. They don't care. And they have a bunch of their followers running around acting like their freedom somehow is being infringed upon by being told that they need to wear a mask. Yet after 9/11, we all rallied around, we all gave up some of our liberties, our civil liberties, when we were told that we have to take our shoes off when we go through airport security, and that there might be somebody listening in on our phone calls. Okay, we went along with that because we were all Americans at that time, and we were all there to keep each other safe. And so we agreed to that. Now here we are, and we are in one of the most horrific situations we can possibly be in. We are all going through personal tragedy and strife, and we are forced to stay in our homes, to walk around with masks. None of us likes this, but because we are Americans and we believe in each other and because we want to keep each other safe, that's why we're doing this. We're willing to do it for the greater good. So when Republicans talk about all of these values that they hold so near and dear, I will turn to them every time now and bring up the last 3.5 years and all of the atrocities that their leader and every single one of those complicit motherfuckers that are sitting in Washington are doing, have done, and have allowed to happen. They had a chance to convict him and spare all of us of the situation we find ourselves in right now, and they did nothing. So they can go to hell, and I hope America is waking up to the fact that both sides don't do it, and that we have to vote in Democrats across the board, up and down the ballot every single time, and fuck the GOP.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Perfect.
Preach, sister, preach. So
I have two quick pieces. One is, as someone who was on back in the way behind in 1973, And when Roe v. Wade was decided, the issue of women's choice and women's rights to do with their bodies continues to be predominant. And I made it very simple. It's 2 sentences. If you do not believe in abortion, do not have one. 2, that's number 1. Very simple. Doesn't matter what religion you are, any woman. 2, if you have a dick, do not be one. Until men, because honestly, every woman will tell you this, if men had to go through labor and childbirth, there would be no second child in any family.
That's true.
Okay?
100%.
There is not one. When men say to me, I had to have dental, quick aside, I had a dental procedure last week. There was a man screaming in the back room because he had an emergency. It turned out to be an infected root. He needed a root canal. He said, now he understands what women going through childbirth go through. And I thought, oh, no, you don't. You try having a breech baby and pushing her out after 2 hours of pushing and come back and talk to me. Right. You survive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of transition. I was a Lamaze instructor. So those are the only 2 things people have to know. And whenever there's discussion about abortion issues and women's rights, I simply put those 2 sentences out and remind people that it's not their business. That's number 1. The other thing I want to say is we've been down this road before. This is unfortunately part of the history of our country. The day Nixon resigned, he still had a 20% approval rating. What this tells us is that 20% of the adults in this country are fucking morons. And you'll never change that. There's a bell curve of intelligence. Most of us are right here in the middle. Then they're the super bright and the super stupid. I'm not talking about people who have actual mental challenges, mental disabilities. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the willfully ignorant and stupid, the people who join, who are in the cult. And there's an article coming out, or it came out today, by a guy who's a cult specialist named Robert Morantz, talking about the fact that the people who continue to support Trump at this point in time are cult members of a cult. And he's a specialist in Jonestown and about what happened there. And if anyone doesn't understand what being in a cult is about, I suggest they talk to Jackie Spear, our representative from California, who was shot 5 times at Jonestown and is a survivor of that shooting, of that massacre. So, my point in that is that no matter how big this victory is, and it has to be massive, it has to be the biggest turnout in U.S. history. We have to hold the House. We have to flip the Senate. We have to take back the White House. We have to win back as many seats at every level, local, state, federal, as humanly possible. And we have to do whatever we can to start to right this wrong. There will still be 20% of fucking morons in this country. The difference is they won't have a major political party that is giving them millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. They need to crawl back into the dark crevices of America like the cockroaches they are.
Hear, hear.
That's our job. What's happened is the cockroaches took over the Republican Party. And be it sins of omission or sins of commission, they're just as guilty. You know, German soldiers who said we were only following orders, or the German citizens who are Polish citizens or Hungarian citizens, all of those people who knew what was going on and either turned their backs on Jews and turned their backs on the camps, turned their backs on their former neighbors, they're all rotting in hell right now. My father went back twice to Germany in 61 and 62 to testify against SS officers from his slave labor camp. And the Germans were not comfortable at that point in confessing and really taking ownership of the atrocities and what they had done. So they tried to trick these survivors in identifying them. But these all of the witnesses had figured out a way to identify who they were. Anyway, those guys were hung, just for the record. And we know, bringing it all the way back to Steph, we know Steph's dad was an assistant prosecutor at Nuremberg too. And that's why it is so important we do end up with a crimes commission, because children have lost their lives. There are crimes against humanity, as Karen, you so eloquently stated, that are continuing to be committed in the name of the American people. And I do not approve, and you do not approve. And I believe the overwhelming majority of us want the right thing to happen, do not approve, and want to make this a better country. So we must vote.
Absolutely. And roll the footage of all of these Republicans after the impeachment trial, right? Or when they had an opportunity to convict, saying that, yes, the Democrats did prove their case, but we're not going to vote to convict anyway.
Exactly.
And go fuck yourselves.
So the only thing I would say with regard to what you just said is, I hope that the level of stupidity is only at 20%. I fear it may be higher. But otherwise, spot on. Karen, I agree with everything you just said. And that's why I wanted you guys here, because you're going to be the first two guests I've had who are actually going to wind this show up with me. I always do a little, my own little finale here, but I can't top what you guys just said. So I'm going to say thank you to my audience for being here, for watching, for listening, for sharing, my two friends who I am so grateful for, so happy to be able to call you both friends of mine, and to be able to, even though it's on Zoom, speak to you and see you regularly, even though it's much more fun to be in your presence. Karen, we have a 3-hour session in Starbucks due us at some point.
Yes.
And Sue, it's time for another party, and I know when you want to hold that party.
I'll be there.
You're all welcome.
We will all be there, and hopefully we will be celebrating. I'm going to follow the Bob Seska line of not counting my chickens before they're hatched, but I'm sure as hell praying for it and going to participate. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you guys who watched, listened. Come back next week. Subscribe to the show, for Christ's sake. I need an audience. Look at these two people. You can hear them elsewhere, but you can't see who they are. My show. They can't say fuck on Stephanie Miller's show.
No, we fucking can't.
So
thank you, Yoni. Thank you for having us.
From me and from Sue and Karen. Wave to the nice people.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe. Wear a mask. Vote.
Yes.
And listen to these two women. Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.